Anything else?
That's it.
All right, you got to tell me what
David,
you do.
what are you up to? Or
No,
what are you doing?
You gotta say what you're doing.
What you doing?
There you go. Couple things. Some sad news. This week is the passing of a amazing icon, Gene Wilder.
Yet
Wilder,
another
for you.
icon in 2016. 2016 sucks, David.
Yeah, so far it's been a rough year for a lot of reasons, but this particular reason hits me at home a lot because I absolutely my little bit of thing to know about me. My favorite movie of all time. Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
Oh, really?
I've seen that movie.
If it's on TV, I'm watching it.
Yeah, I've seen that movie
Not
over.
The Empire Strikes Back.
Nope, no. Willy Wonka. And I think the reason why I like this one, obviously, as a kid, I was like, "Oh, this is amazing."
It's candy.
It's candy, right?
It's candy everywhere.
Exactly. But just the performance of Gene Wilder in that movie is absolutely amazing. Now, what's interesting, he doesn't even come into the movie for like 30,
a good, 40 minutes.
Right, and then just obviously steals the show immediately.
Of course, yeah.
You know what I mean?
That little flip at the beginning.
Yeah, when
there we go.
He looks like he's like a old
man.
decrepit man,
Yeah.
and then does the flip. But the music in that all day today we've been.
We were
humming.
listening before the podcast. You know,
know.
It was just at the Colonnade
imagination.
and on the big screen, so I just saw it on the big screen.
Oh yeah, because they were
Right before
showing
he
it.
died.
they re-released it, right?
They did re-release it, and I saw it right before he died, and oh my god, it was just as good
And that
as ever.
What's weird about that movie, speaking of like with Kubo, is it didn't get the same success it had in the box office that it had afterwards, because I think families were. I mean, there's some weird parts of that movie, especially the boat scene.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean, like where like the psychedelic.
That's my favorite scene.
That's one of my favorites
LSD.
too. No, it's definitely like a moment where it actually gets. He's scary, like unsettling.
He goes like, ooh.
Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes it's the end of the movie where it's all supposed to be happy.
I said
you
good
get
day, sir.
Good day.
Yeah.
Right.
Love
and
it.
all of that is fantastic, but of course the colorful nature when they go into the Chocolate River room, the music in it is of course fantastic. How each kid gets taken away by their, hoisted by their own petard, you know what I mean? Like all the different things that the 7 deadly sins or whatever you want to call them, gluttony, greed, all of those things are fantastic. It's such a fun movie, but at the same time, it is scary at times.
That's the thing. They say that he played that perfect position between scary and just mysterious and
unsettling.
Unsettling, but lovable,
perfect, yeah.
right?
Exactly.
But at the same time,
scary
safe.
and lovable.
Right, it's weird. It's like
how do you be scary and lovable?
His
at the
name's
same time?
Anthony Hopkins. Is about the only other person. He is one of the scariest people in cinema. But like in Hearts of Atlantis, he's like this sweet old man, and you're like, he's gonna eat your face. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's exactly. There's only so many. There's only so many actors who can pull that off.
So
But
contrast
not only that,
to,
but like Young Frankenstein, Blazing Saddles.
Oh,
I mean,
love
he was just a pioneer of all the old comedy.
the
It's
Richard
just-
Pryor movies. He did
Stir
with-
Crazy,
Dude, just super sad, man.
And-
2016 is rough, man.
And I also watched this week. I rewatched Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein. So if you haven't seen any of these movies, of course, go see them. Blazing Saddles is a very interesting movie, especially because there's a lot of racial jokes in it. Like the whole movie is a giant racial joke.
Yes.
And there is a lot, like they use the N-word constantly throughout the movie.
I wonder how it would do today.
Right. Well,
Released
even then,
today.
even back then, I mean, this wasn't that. I think it was in 79 or 80 when it got released. I'm sure it's obviously completely satirical. The movie is entirely.
I'm just gonna say that's the point of it, right?
Yeah, it's over the top. Like, but it does play. It does actually make comments about race based
What's
in the
the
movie.
last comedy movie that had that many N-words?
No,
in
there's
it?
not. There's not. I mean, I think of well,
You just saw the wiener. What's the animated
Sausage Party.
Sausage Party.
I mean, was there N-word in that
Nope.
movie?
No. There's some stuff that's kind of like, and that's why I
It's
think.
probably Jew humor.
But what's interesting about that movie is it has some of the, like, there's classic lines that everyone repeats from it. Like badges. We don't need no stinking badges.
Exactly.
Like that's a classic line. His hand's steady. He's like, yeah, but I shoot with this one, and his hand's all. It's like there's great lines from that movie.
Mel Brooks,
And
right?
it's like, and no matter, it's classic.
It's
just
weird,
watch
too.
it. It's hilarious, even in this day and age.
Yeah, and so the whole movie is, if you haven't seen it, I'll give you a little why you should. One, you just go see it. But another thing, again, Gene Wilder doesn't show up in that movie for like another 30 minutes into the movie. The movie's about this bad guy who wants to take over this town because the railroad's eventually going to move into it and it's going to be worth a bunch of money, but he's got to run the people out of the town. So ultimately what he ends up thinking is a great idea is to appoint a black person as the sheriff, and it'll just make chaos reign and everything will go terrible.
Of course.
And there is again,
Excuse me while I whip this out.
yeah, exactly. And the black guy plays all of they're doing all of the tropes of the traditional stereotypes that everybody has.
Yeah.
But of course, the plan backfires. The sheriff ultimately bests all of the things that are going to ultimately make him lose his job and lose the town. And it's one of those movies where the joke is so. It's I'm trying to explain that it's hard to explain. It's one of those jokes that's so bad that it's good. Like it's like what do cows do on Saturday? They go to the movies. It's like such a oh my god, that's such a bad joke that it's fantastic. It's like Airplane or any of those classic
Spaceballs.
Just slapstick over the top. And
Is Blazing Saddles Mel Brooks too?
Mel Brooks, yep.
Oh yeah, of course. It's great, yeah.
And then so if you haven't seen, you got to go see that. But again, you will. I think nowadays if people because I haven't seen it in a long time.
Me either.
And I went and one of the first lines is like they say the N-word and I'm like, oh, okay. But it does a good job of striking that balance of being very satirical, and it's hard to explain because there's times where I'm like, ooh, like
ouch, almost.
Like you almost went too far with it, but then it's lovable at the same time. The other movie that I think you should.
Do you think we're more sensitive now?
I think so
than we were back then.
I think so, but at the same time, it's just it's.
Because the N-word now hits us like a ton of bricks.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I think it did. I think it did back then in a different aspect. I think the difference here is they make a lot of jokes about the American West and the idea of what a cowboy is or how townsfolk act, and the whole movie is entirely satirical and it almost goes over the top with that.
Which is Mel Brooks' kind of
his shtick, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and they make. I mean, there's some great jokes. There's a joke about Native Americans, and they're not gonna attack the black people because they're darker than us. You know what I mean? There's some jokes that are again, I don't know if it would
not
do
PC at all.
No, of course not.
Totally,
but
that's the point of the movie.
But I think
great.
That's the right, and it's jarring now. But at the same time, I think it's refreshing,
which is cool. That is still jarring to this day and age,
right?
Even though it's made that many years ago.
And the jokes in it aren't, and we'll talk about some other movies later, but an older movie, but the jokes aren't time based. I hate jokes that make fun of pop culture. Because then it will inevitably become stale in most instances.
Well, yeah, it dates the movies. So.
Right, and whereas all of his jokes are very...
timeless.
Yeah, and there's even stupid jokes about everyone in the name is named Johnson. It's just there's so many weird jokes in it that don't really pay off in my opinion, but...
Do you think it's Chaplin-esque? I mean...
Yeah, exactly. It's very... It's so over the top that it's great. And it's always going to be funny.
Always.
The other Gene Wilder movie that I watched this week, again, that you should check out is Young Frankenstein or Young Frankenstein.
Oh so
Frankenstein.
This is about Gene Wilder. This is a movie he's in from the get-go.
Yeah, he's Dr. Frankenstein, right? Frankenstein, I mean.
Frederick Frankenstein. He is the grandson of Victor Frankenstein, who created the monster and reanimated dead flesh, and he is now a surgeon who's a well-respected surgeon, but he wants nothing to do with his grandfather's legacy, and he thinks
history or whatever.
Yeah, and he's like, that's all a crock of crap. All of that's not real science. And then ultimately something happens, and he gets drug into Transylvania, and he starts.
And who was the monster in this one?
Peter Boyle,
and he passed away a few years ago.
A few years ago. If you don't know who Peter Boyle is, he was the father on Everybody Loves Raymond. But he's also been in a ton of old movies, and he's fantastic.
Super funny.
The movie. Okay, first of all, the guy who plays. Igor or Igor, because he doesn't want to be called Frankenstein, he's called Frankenstein, is amazing. He's fantastic. And again, all of the jokes in this are over the top and slapstick, and like for instance, whenever they say one of the people who's kind of this quote unquote scary person, all of the horses go and they do it throughout the entire movie every time they say her name. So again, it's over the top slapstick. It's in black and white, which actually works for it.
It fits it, yeah.
Yeah, but it's obviously it wasn't recorded back when there wasn't Technicolor. But there's a couple scenes in it that are just the Dancing with the Monster is just putting on the Ritz. It's
ridiculous.
It's just so over the top great. So again, go see these movies. They're fantastic. I think
I'm sure you've seen them by now. I mean, come on now, these are old classics. Well,
if you haven't, if you really haven't, you have. Yeah. And the jokes are still funny. That's the best part. Is that the jokes hold up well. And I know that a couple theaters here in town, because of the passing of Gene Wilder, are re-showing some of these for $5.
I know Blazing Saddles and Willy Wonka for sure. They're replaying.
So go watch all of these movies. They're fantastic. They're great movies.
Take a day off work. Just go see the movies.
Tell your boss.
Go see some Gene Wilder stuff.
You're sick. You're something. Go.
Bereavement.
Exactly. But speaking of movies, I did want to get into a movie that I watched, The Little Prince.